Meeting of the Hudson Board of Education. If you'll stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, board members, you have the agenda in front of you. There are no amendments to this evening's agenda. If someone would move approval of the agenda that we have.
So moved.
Motion by Tom. Second by Dan. You can't hear me? I can hear me.
That's all that matters.
I haven't had that direction yet. Thanks, Amy. All right. Motion by Lynn, second by Dan, I believe. Tom?
Motion by Tom.
Tom, all right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the first item of business on the agenda this evening is student staff recognition. And Sandy, I think you're going to introduce the Sustain Hudson and R3 team.
Correct. Our own Hudson R3 committee has been awarded the Green Leaf Award from our own Sustain Hudson. I'm going to ask, you can probably tell who they are out there with their green shirts. So I'm going to ask Ann Mitchell and members of the team to step forward. And I think Diane's also put a replica of the plaque out on the screen as well. So it says, presented to the Hudson School District R3 team for outstanding vision, organization, and leadership of the R3 committee within the Hudson School District, thereby steering a path towards more sustainable operations. And I'll let Ann talk a little bit more about.
They're not going to want that picture.
You know, the whole. We need more than.
Come here.
Yeah.
This is there are lots more, and they work so hard during the year that a beautiful evening like tonight, they need it off. So come closer. This is Jean and Larry.
Hi.
Very photogenic.
Jean and Larry Clausen are two of our community members that are on the R3 committee, and Jean actually is the author of Green Wise Kids. The R3 team provided funding for each elementary school to have her book. And not only that, but she and her daughter and husband came to each of the elementary schools and worked with each class on environmentally sustainable practices that kids can actually start. So we thank Sustain Hudson. That group nominated us for this award. And the group is represented that we work with by everybody from the buildings in the district. We have custodians, nutrition service people, teachers, administrators, and that makes it kind of a ripple effect. So we've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time, and we have big goals for the year ahead. One of them I know is Jean's going to make another book, going to write another book, right? We're hoping. But we're looking forward to sharing our goals with you for the coming year. You'll hear more and more about our green tips and the goals that we set. Just this morning, we have new goals coming out of the R3 team. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann, Jean, and Larry for your leadership on behalf of the folks working on this project for the school district. The next agenda item for us this evening is the superintendent's report. There are several items underneath that section, so Mary, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'm going to talk about our summer school program. And in June, we ran elementary and middle school enrichment programs and had some popular classes. Sandy tells me that Cooking Up a Story and History of Hudson and then Science were some of the most popular classes during that time. In June through August 5th, we had swim classes. Those are very popular. And we have approximately 800 students involved in our summer swim. Certainly a great opportunity for students in our community. In June and July, the high school runs credit recovery and graduation requirement courses. So the graduation requirement courses that they run are Phy-Ed and health for students. And then the last week of July and the first week of August, we run for our English as a second language students swim lessons, math, and reading support. And then lastly, in August, we have orchestra and band camp, and we anticipate approximately, or a little less than 400 students just for that one camp. If we looked at the students overall in elementary, middle, and high school, in summer school alone, and taking out the swim and the band camp, that's approximately 900 students that we serve during the summer. Great opportunities for those students. And overall, summer school, a question that people might ask about summer school is, well, how much does it cost us to run summer school? And essentially, summer school generates a small amount of money for the district. So there is no additional cost to the taxpayers as a result of that. And I'd like to recognize Sandy Kovach, Director of Learning Services, and her team in the Learning Services Department for coordinating summer school and these opportunities for our students, and thank our staff who are also involved in providing these opportunities for our students. And if there are any questions on summer school, I'll just keep moving on to the next item, which is summer school age care. And here we serve about 400 students, and this year the program was at EP Rock. It's called the Backpackers Program. The students in that program have opportunities such as world language, technology, environmental practices, health and fitness, and there is a curriculum of core academics. So we're providing for students fun during the summer and learning for our elementary students. It's certainly well received by our parents, and the program is supported completely through user fees. It's coordinated by Michelle Hagan and a veteran staff, and we thank them for their efforts and all the opportunities for these young people during the summer. We also have another program provided here at Rivercrest and with Camp St. Croix, and that's provided by the Y of Greater St. Paul. So that's another opportunity for students, and both of those programs have been growing this summer, and wonderful way for our students to be involved and engaged in positive activities. Moving on to the Gateway. As you will remember, prior to Rivercrest, this elementary school being built, the board took action and committed to constructing a tunnel between Rivercrest and Camp St. Croix. And the board, in their wisdom, said we're going to fund our half of the project because Camp St. Croix funded the other half of this project through donations, totally through community donations. And I'm very pleased to announce to you this evening that through pledges and donations, we have actually met that goal, and the Gateway has completely funded the district's portion. We certainly want to thank the lists of donors, which I believe you can see on our screen. Certainly those donors are going to be memorialized in a monument sign that will be erected on our side of the Gateway. And all of those donations are very, very important. It's a list of parents, staff, board members, community members, local businesses who've worked on Rivercrest, and also those that provide services and products to the Hudson School District. So we thank everyone that's included there. We also have other donations that have been provided through the purchase of pavers. If you'd remember that you could purchase a paver for, I think it was $50, and have something engraved on that paver. Those pavers have been removed temporarily. There's some changes that needed to be made on a few of them, and some added. So we're making those modifications, and then they will be installed again. There was also one year that we took some fees from people who had boundary exceptions or were open enrolled in the district when they were riding on our buses at no additional cost to the district, but they paid a fee for that. And as a result, those fees for that year also went to fund the Gateway. So certainly we thank all of these donors, and in particular, I'd just like to recognize our environmental sustainers at that top level of $15,000 and above, Anderson Corporate Foundation and the Rivercrest Elementary Parent Group. And then moving on to the Anne Marie Foundation donation. We're certainly pleased that Anne Marie Foundation again has made a donation. Actually, this is their third donation to support Project Lead the Way. And they are providing $3,000 to support the purchase of software for that pre-engineering program that we have both at the middle school and the high school. And they've recognized the expansion of that program and the district being able to serve over 1,000 students in 6th and 7th grade at the middle school to have access to pre-engineering foundational skills. And lastly in my report, I want to talk about the 2011-12 Hudson High School Administration team. Associate Principal Scott Huffman has notified the district that he will be resigning to pursue other opportunities. Scott has served for 10 years as associate principal at the high school, and we certainly thank him for his service to Hudson High School. And so I'd like at this time to invite Hudson High School Principal Laura Love to come forward and talk about the 2011-12 Hudson High School Administrative Team.
Good evening. Wanted to share with you that I have made a recommendation to Superintendent Bowen Agabratten that we appoint high school dean of students Kevin Moore to the high school associate principal position. Kevin has served just 1 year in the position, does have administrative licensure, and was responsible for student attendance and discipline at the primary level, and then also student leadership coordination. And he's done a fine job stepping forward to help with professional development as well. In addition, because he'll be vacating that position as Dean of Students, I would like to recommend that we approve Josh Halverson as Dean of Students for the coming year. Josh does not have administrative licensure, but has teacher leadership and technology leadership skills that we need to enhance our leadership team.
Thank you, Laura, and I know we'll be the board will be taking action on those appointments during the consent items later on in the agenda.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mary and Laura. We are on the report section of the agenda for this evening. And the first report we have is Sandy giving us an update on some secondary math improvements in the curriculum. Sandy.
And
Corey, are you going to join her as well?
Yep. And with
All
us,
right.
Jim DeLune and Corey will be
All right, very
sharing
good.
too.
Thank you.
Team effort. As you know, our efforts to raise expectations and create a high-performing district have been going on for several years, and tonight is another evidence of that system becoming very strong throughout the district. Our secondary math improvement report revolves around the fact that we have some students that need to have increased challenge at the middle school, and so we are recommending the following adjustments. When we started out, we were looking at different data points. And on the first slide, you'll see that we have WKCE data. And when we specifically started looking at 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even into 10th, we have a trend line that's going. But this data really looked at the percent of proficient and advanced. And when you're already at that 90th percentile, there is only so much that you're going to expect. But when we dug deeper into the data, and we look at the next slide, we started looking at the 5th grade, the advanced only data. And you can see a definite increase over the last 5 years in just that advanced category, actually 6 years. And then again, when we look at the 6th grade data, same kind of thing, increasing the number of students in that advanced category. So our system at the elementary, with everyday math at the elementary, is rolling up now to the middle school, stronger math students. So what is it that we're seeing there that needs to happen? And then Corey's going to go on with some other data points.
The next slide gives us some of the additional data here on RIT scores, which is just another way for us to measure math progress on our more common assessments that we give during the school year. And this was indicators of 6th and 7th grade, as well as, I think, 8th grade data during school year that we collect on at least twice a year, and now I think we're moving towards 3 times a year coming this next year. So that was another indicator that we needed to continue to raise expectations for math performance at the middle level. And if you go to the next slide, this kind of lays out some of the additional reasons why, additional causes for this change. The higher expectations, the higher demand for advanced coursework. We were getting regular requests from parents for more challenging coursework in the area of math. And that began a discussion with the math teachers at the middle school, our gifted and talented teachers engaged in that process as well, and that expanded to the GT teachers in the elementary level. And that kind of morphed into some discussions with the middle school administration, and together started generating some ideas on how can we meet this need and promote and continue with higher expectations. This slide continues to kind of show a timeline here where with the middle school GT coordinator and then eventually the entire GT team coming together and looking at some criteria for how could we make some decisions about which students would be successful in a higher level math class, especially when we had 5th graders taking a 6th grade course, we had 8th graders going to the high school. So that resulted in getting some additional information through some the development of a math placement survey to get yet another data point or piece of information to marry with our math scores that we were collecting. And then later in the spring here of this year, really a proposal to the GT team and I guess to the middle school and eventually to Sandy and I about moving in this direction, and I really want to commend the entire team, including our gifted and talented teachers, for working so closely with the math department. Really everybody was on board, and everybody saw a benefit to this for our students. If you go to the next slide here, some of the benefits for making this change. There's a number of them, but I want to point out some of the highlights. This would allow students to take a higher level math class with their peer group. So we would reduce the need for 5th graders being with older kids at the middle school and middle school students being at the high school, and just a more natural learning environment for them. The upper level math students, when they go to high school, currently have to take or double up on their math as a freshman. This would eliminate that need to take 2 math classes as freshmen, which that freshman year, as we know, is already pretty challenging. We currently transport, or at least we're anticipating transporting 11 students from 8th grade over to the high school first period this fall for geometry. They don't get back in time for second period. That impacts their learning time second period just due to the need to transport. So eventually we would move towards providing geometry at the middle level and gaining back that instructional time. And that would come in the next year, in 12-13 school year. And so this is also a cost-neutral change for us, and with the addition of the geometry addition, we would save money in transportation, not only from vehicle use, but just drivers, and increase the instructional time kids would have at the middle school instead of riding back and forth between buildings. At this point, Jim's going to walk us through a bit more of the details as how this decision came to be.
If you go to the next slide, please. As Corey stated, we looked at several different factors when making these decisions. One was that we were just getting kids in greater numbers coming to the middle level from elementary ready for a greater challenge. And we had been having discussions at the middle level for several years about what can we do to properly place students with their peer group. We want to challenge them, we want to properly place them, but we know developmentally their odds of being successful are greater when they're with their grade level peers. And so through not only the NWA RIT scores, but we created a Likert scale questionnaire for students, teachers of math. So 5th grade teachers receive those scores, facilitated through the GT program. 6th grade teachers receive those surveys. If you take a look at, we had talked about study and work habits, problem solving and abilities, academic performance, ability to perform in an accelerated classroom, and math motivation. And we really use those 2 data points to identify students, in addition to students who are identified gifted and talented and already in the program with identification in mathematics. On the right-hand side of that page, you'll see the number of students this year who will be properly placed at grade level in math. In 6th grade, we have 72 students. 40 of them are identified GT, 32 are not, and that's pretty much a 50-50 breakdown. In 7th grade, we have 61 students, 45 GT, and 16 regular ed students. And one of the things we wanted to identify this year, and it's kind of came to fruition through a collaborative effort, is the students taking algebra in 7th grade had not had an opportunity to take pre-algebra. And so we worked along with Tim Chuckle at the middle school to provide a fairly intensive summer school experience for them in pre-algebra, and then we laid out a course of work throughout the summer where parents could work alongside students online, do regular assessments online, and chart their progress. So we are now compiling that information so we have a greater idea of where the gaps may be at the beginning of the year. So we're utilizing that data to really identify instructionally what we need to do to make sure that these students are successful. If you want to turn to the next slide. And this really talks about the improvements in the math sequence for our upper-level math students. Currently in 2010, 2011, our advanced students in 6th grade take course 2. So when they are in 11th grade, they're forced to make a decision, pre-calculus or AP statistics. If they take the AP statistics route, they are not able to get to AP calculus unless back in, as Corey stated, in 9th grade, they double up in geometry and algebra 2. So right now what we have is we're going to have a greater range of students who have access to the entire math sequence. Our accelerated students will be able to get there by just taking one math course a year, but no system is perfect. So if we have students who have the capability to get through our entire math sequence, they can still double up in 9th grade and get there. So it creates more opportunities for more kids.
Obviously, we will be monitoring these adjustments, watching students and their performance, providing support, and then long-term also watching the students that are accelerated at the middle level this year as they roll up to the high school, and again, looking for, do they continue on and go through that whole sequence? How is their performance, and make adjustments as necessary. Thank you.
Other questions? Tom?
Question regarding just, space is a current and common question with the middle school. So does this create any issues along that line?
No, very fortunately, it's space neutral as well as cost neutral. We are just identifying a section of students who really will be challenged at a more appropriate level, but we have the same amount of math sections. We're just offering a different variation of courses.
Any questions? No? All right. This is great. It's great for our students. It's great for the community. It's great for the parents. It's great, I think, for the folks at the middle school. But thank you for the work, all of you.
I just really would like to add to recognize our teachers of math, both at elementary and middle school, who have prepared our students for higher level courses and to be ready for those. Certainly we have Tim and others working to help support students make this leap, this new leap. And looking forward to that work as we have students advancing and learning at higher levels. So thank you for everyone who has provided this opportunity for our students and prepared them.
2010-11 SMART goals. It shows Dave Grambo. Dave, are you coming up here by yourself?
Well, no, we'll have some guests.
I figured.
Well, thank you very much for having us here to share our results. We're very proud of the results, and it's a fun time of the year to come here and share all the work that's been done. As you know, the SMART goal process is designed to improve student learning, and we're going to be sharing some of those results with you this evening. But we're also going to be sharing some other results that aren't necessarily directly related to student learning, but are the results of the SMART goal process nonetheless. So looking forward to that. As you know, in education, we're not in any shortage of acronyms, so I'm going to take a moment just to define the SMART acronym. It's we throw out a lot of them. So the S in SMART goals stands for specific, and tonight you'll notice all of our goals are very specific, and they're laid out with a level of specificity that allows everyone to fully understand what that goal means. And the M stands for measurable, and in education in the past, many goals were really void of the ability to be measured. So it was difficult to determine if you were successful or not. You'll notice in all our results, there's measurability built into the goal itself. And the A stands for attainable. This is an interesting one because we set our standards very high, but we also make sure that the goals are realistic and they're set in such a way that if we really push ourselves, our students can reach the goals and the goal that we set for them. The R is for results-based, and that is actually the focus of tonight's presentation. And the T is for time-bound, and the idea there is that we need to have a specific point in time in which we plan to achieve the goal, and obviously we're on an annual cycle with our goals. The SMART goal process has really been instrumental in supporting the unprecedented growth that we've enjoyed with our student learning. And as I said, you're also going to be hearing of some really impressive staff learning and professional growth that has occurred as a result of the SMART goals. Just this year, Learning Forward, which is the premier international organization for professional development, released new standards in the area of professional development, and they're on your screen there in front of you. And the interesting changes with these standards from the previous standards that were really guiding the work of professional development is that they're very much linked to student learning. In the past, it was very much isolated to adult learning, but now that connection is made, that the purpose for professional development is indeed to increase student performance. I'm going to highlight 3 of those areas that really pertain and directly relate to the work and the growth that has occurred in the area of SMART goals. That first one is learning communities, and we hear the term professional learning communities in the acronym PLC. We hear that a lot, and in Hudson, we're very proud of the work we've done in the area of PLCs. The first thing that you need to know with a concept of a PLC or professional learning community is that teachers require common planning time. We need to provide that time for teachers to work together and grow together for our students. And we have that at both the middle school and at the elementary school. And fortunately, next year that's built in at the high school. So we'll have that structure of common planning at all 3 levels, and professional learning communities will be, are or will be underway. The other thing that's important to know about professional learning communities is that it provides for embedded professional development. And the idea is that instead of sending a group of teachers or an individual teacher off to get some training that may or may not directly relate to the work they're doing back in the schools, with this concept of professional learning communities, we bring the teachers together, and the learning that occurs is directly related to the goals. That's the relationship to the SMART goals. And then the big thing with professional learning communities is that there's a continuous focus on student learning through a collaborative effort, and that data, which we'll get to, is an important piece. And that's what the next standard that we're going to focus on. With Learning Forward, they highlight data as an important element to professional learning. And what we've learned now is data is something that we have always had a lot of. And the problem is the acronym there is DRIP. We're data rich, information poor. The idea is that teachers need to be able to get together and turn that data, which is just the raw information, into usable information that informs and guides instruction. So when teachers are together in their professional learning community, what they're actually doing often is poring over the learning data and saying, what does this tell us? What patterns does it show us? And what can we learn? What are our next steps? And then finally, implementation as a standard that Learning Forward puts forth. This is an interesting one because implementation, that idea of taking any sort of instructional practice or program and implementing, is something we do very differently now than we had in years past, and it's very much directly related to the SMART goals. The reason this is the data and the work that we do and that goal guides our implementation. And there's a few points up there that are really important to understand. That first one that Learning Forward points out is that we need to apply what we know about change. And for anyone involved, really it's not isolated to education. This is just the way the world is. It changes rapidly. And we need to be prepared for that. And you actually need to learn how to manage change. We've had a lot of professional development at all levels in the area of change. And it's really helped everyone, administrators, teachers, everyone involved in the educational system, understand how to make the most of change and make sure that it's focused on continual growth. Secondly, sustaining implementation is very important. In the past, we have implemented many different practices, but all too often they were implemented with a great deal of excitement and energy at the beginning of the process, and as things change, new programs come forth, we've dropped that level of support. The SMART goal process actually really helps sustain that support and that implementation because we have a purpose. The purpose is not the program. The purpose is student learning, and we measure that student learning through the SMART goals. And the third thing that they point out is that providing constructive feedback is an important element to any implementation. And that feedback comes in several forms. Some of the feedback is from a principal in the classroom giving feedback to a teacher, from teachers to students, and then my personal favorite is feedback from teacher to teacher, which has really expanded our level of teacher leadership when they can go to a colleague and have a common language and common goals and be able to say, you know what, I need some feedback, and they reach for that, and it's really been exciting to see. And what we're going to bring to you tonight is we'll have the data and the results, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you. But a few things that I wanted to highlight. First of all, you will notice several of the goals that we will be sharing really were set to establish baselines. Although we had a numerical goal, they were somewhat arbitrary in that it was the first time we measured that specific outcome. With that, we really provided some baselines. Another thing that I wanted to highlight with this, again, is that we're going to be sharing some stories of teacher learning and professional growth that has occurred as a result of the SMART goal process. So we have Teresa Jenis from the high school, representing the high school and her professional learning, Tim Halverson from the middle school, and Amanda McCarthy representing the elementary schools and the growth that they have all experienced as a result, again, of the SMART goal process. And with that, I'm going to introduce or reintroduce Laura Love to talk about the high school goal.
Should I stand behind you back here or come up there?
I don't have the sun in her face.
Yeah, I know.
It's probably better to be back
The first goal that we set last year for the high school was related to advanced placement, students in advanced placement courses. What the research shows is that students who take advanced placement courses while still in high school and maybe who take the test, even if they don't pass the test, are typically more successful in a post-secondary course that they take for obvious reasons. It's much more college-level expectations at the AP level, so advanced placement. So our goal was to really focus on subgroups that we wanted to make sure that the door was open to all students. Subgroups include gender, ethnic differences, lower income or upper income differences, and then also special education representation. And so our initial goal, as Dave said, without having a lot of data to go on, was to increase an additional 10% from subgroups from the October 2010 enrollment in our AP courses to our enrollment for 2011-12. While we increased over 10% overall, we did not increase 10% in each of those subcategories. Our overall population does mirror somewhat. There are some areas that we need to continue to focus on and improve. Special education is one in particular that we want to continue to improve upon. But our goal really should be to continue to increase the enrollment in our AP courses and to ensure that our populations mirror the demographics of the high school. So that will be our focus for the future. Our second goal was to decrease the number of students in 9th grade who were considered at risk of academic failure by 50%. And you'll see in our results for that goal that we identified 32 students who were considered potential for failing one or more classes, and we identified those students early on. Again, the research shows if you can sort of catch those students within 3 weeks. Some of those kids weren't yet failing, but they were on the downslide already within 3 weeks of the first year of high school. And sometimes that's related to freshman transition, which you know what we're working on for the coming year with advisories and specific transition processes. So we identified 32 students and placed those students in our guided study hall, and 65% of the 32 identified reduced risk of failure by the end of the year. That represents about 21 students who benefited directly from guided study hall, so almost one full section of students that are potentially now going to graduate on time 4 years down the road if we can continue to support them on that path. And then goal 3 was that by 2011, we were very ambitious. We said that we wanted 95% of our students to report a positive personal connection with at least one staff member at Hudson High School. The results there aren't as good as we would like to see. And actually, it could be in the way that we worded the statement on the survey that they took at the end of the year in May. There is at least one adult in this school who I can talk to who really knows me. And you can see the results. What we did was we wanted to make sure that we're looking at all the students at every grade level, both male and female. The results differ a little bit by gender, and also then by grade level, you can see that there's an increase by the time they're in 12th grade of the number of students who report that there's at least one high school adult who really knows them and they can talk to that person. So part of our goal with that, it really shows the need for advisories, because our freshmen had the lowest levels, reporting that there's at least one high school adult who knows them well. And so for the future, we hope to see that this is a baseline for us, and our advisories and other efforts at the high school to personalize the atmosphere will demonstrate a huge gain. Maybe not 95% by next year, but by 4 years from now, we'll have at least 95% from all of our students. So it's definitely an opportunity for growth. There are some areas we didn't have baseline data, and we're happy to have that now. And then we'll be looking at this data, and there's actually 31 questions that we ask on the student survey. About half of them are academic, and about half of them are related to climate. So we're asking questions even like, that the high school courses that they're taking are relevant to what they want to do in their post-secondary life. And those results are results we're examining too, but these were focused on our SMART goals. Are there any questions before I introduce Teresa? Okay. Teresa was instrumental in helping us determine baseline through surveys and data gathering. A lot of work went into the right kinds of questions we wanted to ask. And she's also worked with a team of leaders at the high school this past year to help us learn more about response to intervention, which is a direction we need to be going along with our learning with the SMART goals. So I'll introduce Teresa.
Okay, I'll just talk a little bit about each one of the goals that she talked about and how the professional development played into it. The first one she talked about was the AP courses. No. Sorry. The first one she talked about was the AP courses, and in social studies specifically, which is the area in which I teach, it's a big one, and we've really opened the communications. We've had a lot of discussions about what the students need in preparation in their freshman and sophomore years. It's big because APUSH is the first AP course that our students are exposed to. So our teachers that teach the AP courses have been in discussions, not necessarily content knowledge that they may be lacking, but more the reading, the writing, the note-taking, those kind of skills. And we feel that those changes that we are making at the freshman and sophomore levels will only enhance the learning of all the students across the board, whether they take AP as their junior or in a senior class later on. The second one she talked about was the guided study halls. And there has been, I feel, an increase in communication between departments. Teachers are now discussing if there's an issue with a student in guided study hall. There's things going across from between English and social studies and math and science, whereas before you always would go just to who had the student last year in social studies, well, how did you handle that? Versus now it's more of a let's deal with what works right now with this kid and looking at the other subject matters and how are they doing in those areas. And the third one about the climate and talking about someone that they can relate to, I think that has really brought about a lot of increase in awareness to the amount of communication that's going back home and with the students. Feedback is a big part of that, one of the things that we'll be working on again this year. Not only the amount of feedback or communications, but the natures of it, and learning out about new methods of communications. One of the things that I learned was how to send the progress report home via email this year. Made it very simple, and I increased my personal sending home communications just a lot, a tremendous amount. I think my box is pretty full on that one. It also brought about collaboration with other teachers about, we would do Friday fun days, or in my case, I oftentimes talked with my students for about 5 minutes about what they did over the weekend, and talking to other students or other teachers about activities or ways that they went about doing that and trying to build those relationships with the students. It's an exciting time to be at Hudson High School. There's a lot of things with advisories and the possibility of academies coming in the future. These things are just going to increase, especially with the collaboration that we'll be seeing this next year.
All right. With that, I will invite up Dan Koch, Jim DeLune, and Tim Halverson to talk a little bit about Hudson Middle School. And I'll step out of the way because we're out of chairs.
You could sit there and we could stand here. Okay. Well, we're pleased to present some information with respect to the SMART goals from the middle school this year. A couple of interesting points that I would like to make prior to that is 12 years ago, the young man on my right, Mr. Halverson, who was on the staff when I arrived 18 years ago, I worked with Tim and several other math teachers with respect to trying to figure out what adjustments or changes needed to be made in the math program. And at that time, we had 3 leveled math classes, and the research suggested we should go to 2. And so we worked very diligently with that research and felt that we had come up with just exactly the right program, and we had now had 2 levels of math at every grade instead of 3. And the report you just got tonight suggests that we've gone back the other direction, largely due to the research that we have uncovered now. Along with that previous research, it suggested that middle-level students weren't quite sophisticated enough to take on the challenges of algebra or geometry during the middle-level years. The research we have now says you better do that. So the point here being we're always sort of on guard with respect to the research. It's important to pay attention to the research, and times change. And you need to make yourself open and available to those kinds of things as you go along. So the math changes are very interesting to me because we've talked about this for a long time. Tim and I were part of a team when Dr. Sams was Director of Instruction. Dan, you remember that time period? We presented at the Wisconsin Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development on students being engaged in monitoring their progress. Had the charts, had everything ready to go 12 years ago. And when I spoke with Tim about 3 years ago on this again, he just got it out, dusted it off a little bit, and said this was the foundation before we could begin to use that again. And indeed we are, because the current research suggests that these are the types of things we should be doing. So the SMART goal process, this is actually my real point here. We stumbled over those years because we didn't have a defined process through which we could make the kind of progress that we have been making as of late in the last few years. And the SMART goal process has enabled us to do that. Because we avail ourselves of that approach, we now find that we can do more and better things with the professional development of our staff and for the level of achievement for our students. To that end, we have 2 disciplines that have entered the fray, so to speak, with the SMART goal process this year. Science and social studies, for the first time now, are in the SMART goal process, and we're going to talk a little bit about their experience in this. Math has led the way for us in the SMART goal process for a number of years, and obviously you can see by the results that we have and that we've talked about tonight that math is sort of on the tip of the spear, leading the way for us in our building. We actually have had a very good year with respect to the SMART goals, with 6 new teams being brought into the process. Math and language arts have some experience already at this. Language arts was engaged in a curricular review process this year, which is why you don't see them included in the core report here. But we gained a lot of experience for these groups in the process, the SMART goal process. We have learned and discovered how we can better use, how we can gather data, analyze and utilize the data for the benefit of both professional practice and for student achievement. And we have also entered into more collegial conversations amongst many of our staff members, especially in the science and social studies areas, which sometimes are uncomfortable for them, but all the time very, very beneficial. So this year, with respect to science and social studies in particular, what we've established here are baselines that we can work with. And we have tried very diligently, and we will continue to work with this, moving our faculty toward assessing skill development as opposed to just content awareness and content knowledge alone. So this is a big transition for us. And I think, as I said before, we had a very good year. We've got Tim to talk to us a little bit about the impact on him as a professional. I have Jim here, who was charged with monitoring the SMART goal process more closely this year. And I would say this is, as the end of my career appears not too far down the road here, it's important to bring folks up to speed and enter into the process and understanding full well what the middle school is all about and what we're able to do. And Jim's doing an excellent job in supporting our instructional processes, at the middle school. And with that, then I'll have Jim talk about the goals and the results that we had.
Thank you. I also want to just echo what Dan said. It was kind of an exciting year this year as 6 new teams entered the process and really started to delve into collecting the data and using that information to have collegial conversations, to prompt their research, to get them to share best practices. It was great to be a part of, and I'm fortunate for that experience. When you look at math, all 3 grade levels had a similar SMART goal. They were working on computational skills, multinumeral computational skills in 6th grade, multinumeral computation skills including decimals in 7th grade, and then multinumeral computational skills including decimals and real numbers in 8th grade. And the goal was, and again, establishing a baseline here, but our goal was 90%. And if you take a look at the next slide, in 6th grade, we had 91% of our 6th graders by the end of the year that demonstrated proficiency. One of the things that we did learn throughout the course of the year was the importance of really establishing a good goal and establishing the proper assessment tool. In 6th grade, their assessment tool was a 6-item question, error, but proficiency was 6 out of 6. So if a student who was quite capable and has established that throughout the year made one small error anywhere within a problem, they were not proficient. And so establishing those definitions we found out through collecting the data and looking at it was very important. 7th grade, 92% of our 7th graders demonstrated proficiency in multinumeral computation. And in 8th grade, 86% of our students demonstrated proficiency in multinumeral computation. And those were computational skills. The next slide, 8th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th grade science, as Dan said, we're really looking at moving away from assessing just content area knowledge questions, but assessing skills. And so we brought writing into the science area. And the 6th grade goal was 90% of 6th grade students would score proficient or higher in writing a properly supported response to content probes. In 7th grade, the goal was 90% would score a 6 on a differentiation skill rubric, which was a rubric on the writing process. And in 8th grade, it was 90% of students would be proficient on a science lab writing. And if you take a look at the results, 86% of our 6th graders scored proficient or higher. 90% of our 7th graders did reach proficiency on the differentiation skill rubric, and 85% of 8th graders scored proficient or higher in science lab writing. But again, more importantly than that is the fact that we established a baseline, number one, and two, we have numbers now, and we can sit down and teachers can talk about that data and develop an action plan on, okay, let's research how we're going to improve their supporting sentences, how are we going to improve their sentence structure. Next, we have social studies. And again, we brought the skills into it. And social studies, they wanted the students to demonstrate proficiency on a writing rubric and global awareness as measured by a written response. And that was similar in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And the way they approached that is they scaffolded the rubric. So the 6th grade rubric was appropriate for 6th grade. The 7th grade rubric then looked at increasing those skills, and the 8th grade rubric then looked at increasing those skills. And if you look at the results, we had 89% proficient in 6th grade, 75% proficient in 7th grade, and 85% proficient in 8th grade. And again, it was a great process. I think our teams did a great job of embracing the idea of making sure that when we're sitting down and talking about student learning, we have numbers in front of us to help guide where we need to go. Do you want next steps?
You can see on this slide with establishing the next steps. Establishing a baseline, it's a necessary part of creating the establishing the quality of the. I better get up here again, hadn't I? The quality of the SMART goals. The results that we've found are mixed in to a certain degree. They're mixed with respect to what we had hoped we would be achieving and what we actually accomplished, but recognizing that we were doing this for a first time, trying to establish a baseline. So we never want to lose sight of the fact that our goal actually is 100%. And I think I've mentioned this before to the board that that's always the target for us is 100% of our kids. So we have these results, and they represent a baseline for us in the first year that we've used these assessments. We've also discovered that assessing a skill is a bit more difficult than assessing, content awareness or content knowledge, and refining that process and trying to articulate amongst our teachers the specifics of a quality assessment geared toward measuring a skill, which we hope reflects growth over time, not just 1 point or in-time assessment. So that's part of our next steps in terms of refining those assessments. And obviously the data illustrates, in some areas, we want to spend more time. We want to try to keep moving our students further up, the continuum, moving them higher in their achievement levels. And then finally, the assessments obviously will be continuously reviewed, as I was talking about here, and we will try to establish more data points as far as collecting information. One of the conceptual things that we've worked on that we encountered very early is a disconnect amongst the faculty, a disconnect with respect to if we spend all this time assessing, that I'm losing time teaching. And the connection that we've tried to make is assessment is teaching. It helps inform instruction. It helps us determine, what our kids already know, and if we need to modify or adjust the instruction at that particular point in time. And we've turned that corner. And you'll see that reflected in the SMART goal that we have, been working on for next year, and in the continued work they're going to do in the individual disciplines next year as well. So now I want to turn it to Tim, who he's been at the middle school from the beginning. I think it'll be 19 years now that building's been in existence, and has seen a lot come and go as far as that pendulum is concerned with the research and what we should do. But he has some reflective thoughts for you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys, although I don't enjoy necessarily speaking in front of groups of people unless they're 11. This will do just fine. I'd also like to say before I go any further that what I wrote down in about 90 seconds on my computer at home as soon as Jim and did even Dave ask me? It was you. Jim asked me, and these are what we came up with in that 90 seconds of talking to my colleagues, and they are in no way were we coached. by anybody from the administration. The single most important thing that we came up with was the privilege that we have as sixth grade teachers to be able to meet once a week as sixth grade teachers, as math teachers. So we can't accomplish anything anymore without being able to sit down together. The fact that we have that time is remarkable. It has become an opportunity for me to share what I know with the younger teachers, but more importantly for me to get stuff from them that is just marvelous. That opportunity was the first thing that popped in my mind. Secondly, differentiation of the kids' learning styles. When we take our kids through the test, and the test is a 6-problem test, 3 long division and 3 long multiplication problems, and they can't miss anything. And it's easy to make a mistake, and you give the kids the first test, and you weed out who knows what they know and who doesn't know it, and you focus then on those kids that didn't get it the first time, and then you focus on the kids who didn't get it the second time, and so on and so forth. And as you narrow it down, you find yourself wondering, what can I do with that kid? Not with this group of children, but specifically with those kids, to differentiate their instruction, to get them to understand what they're doing. That has been an eye-opener for me, to be able to do that. I don't teach 2 large groups anymore as much as I teach to a whole lot of small groups. The third thing, and it may be more important to some of you than others, is we have taken technology, most notably the clickers that we were able to get through a grant, which are called student response systems. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with those or not, but we have a set in each classroom in 6th grade. Our tests are all on the computer. The kids take the test using these clickers, and we have the data instantaneously. We print that out, and we can look to see how Jimmy did on this test compared to a second one, and whether the progress is being made or not. We can crunch those numbers in a matter of seconds instead of hours or days sometimes because of the time constraints. So it's been working towards a SMART goal is, I was wrong. I was wrong. It's been an eye-opener, an opportunity for me to grow as a teacher quite a little bit. Over the 18 years, I thought it was 15 that building was open. Because I misplaced 3 of those years.
He's a math teacher.
One of them, I'm sure, was with Danaski. So thank you again for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
That concludes our report here, but do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Madam President, just a question, something Tim had mentioned that struck a question for me was, how often do you test the kids, to determine proficiency? Because something I think maybe you or Dan said, and thinking back to my days in school, I remember mistakes oftentimes were just more of a matter of distraction or lack of attention or something. And so it didn't completely measure proficiency or aptitude necessarily. So
that's a really good question, and we struggled with that. That's one of the things we use that planning time for, is how can we make sure that that's not happening. We gave the kids 6 tests, and we spaced them out over an equal amount of time. The first test, I had 10% of my kids passed it for all sorts of reasons. That's fine, but that's what you expect. You need to know where to go. So then you start figuring out, what did they do wrong? You're analyzing, what are these kids doing wrong? Is it the simplest of things? Are they being careless with their time tests, their facts? We found out that we need to start giving our kids time tests on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, so they can get stronger at that. Because some of them were simply missing it because 8 times 7 is not 49. Mm-hmm. They changed it. It used to be.
They get 7 times 7.
The research sure shows that it's not. It used to be 15 years ago. We found in sharing information with each other that if we gave them a problem a day, we'll put on the smart board, and this one wasn't saved, the data wasn't saved, it's just a problem a day. And that's what they do while we're waiting for things to get going. Those kids rock and roll, they get on it, they use the clickers, they put the stuff in. You can look at the data right away. The kids want to see the perfect circle because the data shows up either as a pie graph or a bar graph. So we did it on a daily basis, 1 problem a day daily. In April, I thought I wanted to see if this is making a difference or not. So I spent none of April giving a problem of the day, and then used my kids as a guinea pig on the 4th test. And they didn't perform well at all. And the other classes did. And they were upset. Why didn't you do this with us? Well, because I said I had to find out something. And so we went back to the problem of the day. So they get to practice on a daily basis.
There's a lot more going on here other than just learning the psychology and
there's
incentive
a lot
and
more going on.
competition. And
absolutely.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the kids are digging it, too.
Remember, it's middle level. Middle level. There's a lot more going on there.
Other questions?
Yes.
I just, Barbara, just a comment, something that Tim said that struck me as being very, very positive. I think you said you find yourself spending less and less time teaching to larger groups of kids and more to the smaller groups as we do our differentiation. And I just think that's a very positive development. I mean, obviously we don't all learn at the same rate, and I've always been a proponent of individualized education to the extent that it's possible. So I just, it was very, very great to hear that.
Dan taught me that word.
Is that right? Okay.
Well, one of the we ask all the time, and I've asked the staff whenever we meet in our teacher teams or whatever. How do you know they know? Mm-hmm. And the only way you're going to get to that is to know the individuals and what they can and cannot do. Mm-hmm. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
We're going to do a little bit of chair movement after. So on behalf of our 6 elementary schools, Amy Hamburg, Travis Behringer, and myself will share the SMART Goal results for kindergarten through 5th grade for the 2010-11 school year. We are so proud of the hard work, not only by the teachers, but by the students and the families and the support staff to help us with this goal. As we've discussed in the past, our focus at the elementary level has been literacy. We have worked hard for professional development to help develop every teacher as a strong reading teacher. And therefore, our SMART goal follows that same area, and it's in the area of reading. And our SMART goal for the 2010-11 school year is that 88% of our students kindergarten through 5th will be reading at or above grade level by those DRA and F&P assessments that we spoke of in the past. It is a large goal for us, but we really wanted to stretch our students and really have that high expectations for our elementary kids. And Amy's going to share our inspiring results.
As my 1-year-old granddaughter would say, ta-da! Ta-da! I really want you to understand that number. However, our goal was 88, and we achieved 89%. Just to give you an idea of what that represents in terms of our learners at elementary school, at the beginning of the year, what we do is we look at how many students have already reached the end of the year goal. We hope every student will grow 1 year in a year, but we want to make sure that the students who are not at grade level at the beginning of the year reach that goal by the end of the year. So at the beginning of September this year, we had 609 students at the elementary level who were already at the end of the year. So that 89%, we have students who are already there at the beginning of the year, and we don't forget about those students. We want them to grow and go beyond where they are. At the end of the year, in June, we had 2,234 students, or 89% reading at grade level. It's amazing results. The numbers don't really reflect the hard work and the number of a number of reading levels that some students achieved. So the next slide kind of, again, only represents percentages. And so we do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the stories behind that growth and how the elementary teachers have focused on student learning in the area of literacy. In 2008-09, we were at 83%, and I believe our baseline at the beginning of that year was about 79%. So we were reaching for 83 and achieved that. Then we went to 86, and this year we were at 89. So we're shooting for 90 next year.
And it's my pleasure to talk tonight a little bit about the work that went into this and how do we achieve those unprecedented results of 89% or 1,600 plus students reaching their grade level goals. And a lot of that came from the work that was being done at the grade levels across all 6 elementaries. Each of the grade level teams developed specific goals that were directly linked to the overall elementary reading goal. And those goals were measured throughout the year, and they guided much of the professional learning that occurred at the elementary buildings throughout the year. And now to bring it to some specific examples and what this looks like. We've got 3 examples up here. Each of us is going to share what that looked like in one of our building grade levels. And I get to talk a little bit about the Rivercrest kindergarten team of Corey Rogers, Sarah Johnson, Lois Cahoy, and Caroline Wolf, who used data to identify a focus on comprehension and higher level questioning, and specifically the ability for students to retell a story. And with the way they went about doing that, 3 of the ways, or 3 of the specific examples that they had, were, one, they, as a team, developed a greater capacity to utilize the comprehension puppets that existed in their grade level. They used repeated readings of quality literacy selections, and they did that together and then assessed after each one. And also, they got a chance to see each other's classrooms and also to visit other kindergarten classrooms in the district to see what was happening in other kindergartens in order to reach the results that they had.
I think the theme you'll hear throughout this, as well as when we invite one of our elementary teachers up, is really the collaboration. And we would not be going to this level if we weren't collaborating. At EP Rock, our 2nd grade team of Adam Wirt, Peg Rushmeyer, Diane Claycomb, and Linda Schwertel identified a gap in their readers of phonemic awareness and phonics. And they set a goal for themselves and for their learners using the Dibbles test that they would score 50 or more at the end of the year on nonsense word fluency, which means very little, except they have a little test that tests it's nonsense words, 3 letters. It could be F, U, T, and the students have to look at those letters and make sense of those letters, even though and pull them together. So they used a sentence dictation test to every month measure growth in the students in their room. They used mini lessons, and they tried to help the students with spelling patterns. And I think the biggest aha was when they got together and looked at their sentence dictation results. They could say, you know, we still are not getting short A's or long A's or, you know, silent E's. And so they would work together to develop some lessons, mini lessons for students, again, in small groups, working together, but really looking at the data. And I think the biggest thing is that there's no blaming. There's no looking at students as it's their fault. It's we got to figure out something to do. And you've heard that theme throughout the buildings, and it's very exciting work. And at the end, they had 87% of their students reading at grade level. And I think one of the things that they said to me that I shared with Mary at the end of the year is that over these 3 years, as we've seen our students grow, they get the incoming class list from the year before. And, you know, the first few years, there were half of the students in their class were not reading at grade level. And it was overwhelming. And now they get their lists, and there's 2 or 3 students at the most who are starting below grade level. So it's really remarkable, the work they do together.
As I spoke in the beginning, these are just 3 highlights from the 6 elementary schools. Every elementary grade level is working on a goal like this. I will be highlighting an intermediate example at Hudson Prairie, and it's my 5th grade team, and that's Amanda McCarthy, Maya Stubendick, Brianne Klepp, Claudia Kell, and Heidi Schimmen. And what they did is they analyzed the data, the MAP data from the year before, and they really looked to see where were the gaps with the students. And when they were analyzing it, we noticed that our literal comprehension was weaker than even the extending and evaluating text. And we were all like, we thought that the literal comprehension had to come first. So it kind of put us in a quandary at Hudson Prairie, but it really was the focus for a lot of learning on our grade level SMART goal teams. So after they analyzed that data, they used a CARTS, which is a tool that really talks about specific skills that kids need to move along that continuum. And those teachers use those skills in their small group instruction, guided reading, target time, to really focus on the needs of the students and use their assessments to really focus their instruction on those areas. Another thing that this team did is they did a book study. They studied the CAFE book, and they really talked chapter by chapter about what they're learning and what they're applying in the classroom. And that learning really happened during that collaboration time, but also it bridged when they asked to go into other classrooms and observe their colleagues and really talk about lessons, what's working, what's not, what can I do next, and really to start that conversation, like Tim had said, on how we can help every student reach that high level. Another piece that they did too, which I really find amazing, is they helped each student to understand what is their personal goal. So when they're in guided reading or target time, that these kids had a personal goal, how they were going to become a better reader. And I could go to any fifth grade classroom and ask the students what they were working on, and they could tell me and articulate it beautifully on what they were working on. And it was neat to see fifth graders come up to me and say, Miss Prather, this is how I did. You know, they knew their goals, and they lived in them and believed in what would the next steps be. Amanda McCarthy is going to share some of her professional learning. Amanda is a fifth grade teacher, as I said, on this team that I spoke of. She's also an elementary literacy facilitator and a member of our SMART team as well.
Thank you. Make sure I get close enough. I think that for us, the SMART goal process is an excellent example of differentiated staff development. As elementary teachers, we're able to acquire a foundation of skills, in this case in the area of reading, through late starts, early releases, district staff development days. But as we've become more equipped to teach reading, what we're finding is that our students at our grade levels, and sometimes specifically in our own classrooms, have different needs, or needs that are very, very specific. And so the SMART goal process allows us to study some of those needs. As Susie said, we determined in our grade level that our students were struggling with a literal comprehension strand on the NWEA assessment. And so we created a plan, and we had month by month, everything was delineated out, what we were going to do, how we were going to measure our progress, but then also how we were going to measure student progress, because we know that the SMART goal process, as was referred to earlier, it's a two-pronged process. We need to measure teacher learning as well as student learning, and so we wanted to ensure that that happened. So we acquired our foundation, we dug deeper, and our topic allowed us to grow our own professional learning, but also meet specific needs that we had determined for our students. We also were able to delve much deeper into our data and use that data then as a formative tool to drive our instruction. Not all of our students needed this instruction. We had some very specific groups of students who needed that specific instruction, and then assessments to match that. I think the other benefit of the SMART goal process is our teams don't see roadblocks anymore as a challenge. We see them as an opportunity. And our teachers are much better equipped to seek out professional resources, seek out professional research or articles, but also we're seeing much more collegiality, collaboration. Teachers are going into each other's classrooms, as has been said before, to observe. They're going into each other's classrooms to have discussions. We would joke at the end of the day that we'd be out there in the hallway, our team going, okay, so that didn't work so well. What did you do? How did you handle that? And it allows us really to focus our instruction on specific needs that students have. For me, I had a student who came into my classroom 2 years behind the grade level expectation. She was reading at the beginning of a third grade level. And for a fifth grade teacher, knowing that this child is going to go on to the middle level and need to read their reading, their social studies, their science, their math, it was a very large hurdle that I knew we needed to fix for her. But we gave her some very, very focused instruction. We worked on goal setting. We spent a lot of time on motivation. And when she left my room, she was reading at grade level. And so we we're so excited for her because she now sees herself as a reader. She's excited about reading, and we feel as a team that when she goes to the middle school, she will be successful there because of our really specific, detailed plan that we set out for her, and she achieved.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, so the next time we'll be talking about SMART goals will be this upcoming fall, and we'll be sharing our goals for the upcoming year, and we're looking forward to that as well. It really is an exciting time. August 22nd, we'll have all of our SMART teams, the teams that are charged with the responsibility of setting the goals. We'll be meeting at a retreat and poring over the data and learning together and working on setting the goals for the upcoming year. And I want to again thank our 3 teacher leaders that shared this evening. Their learning has been incredible, and it's really something because as I stated earlier, our focus is on student learning, and it's always firmly focused on student learning. And yet there's a tremendous amount of learning that happens because of that focus. And these 3 teacher leaders are just representatives of an incredible amount of learning that happens with all of our teachers. So I want to thank you all. And with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions, but from the board members?
Madam President, I'm curious on the reading numbers. How many of those kids are ESL or are not English speakers?
That's a great question. We do have all the disaggregated data. I don't have it in front of me, but what we do when we analyze our data, we actually look at each one of the subgroups. Actually, when Laura was sharing about the AP data, a similar process where the tool we use to collect the data allows us to take each subgroup and look at possible areas where we may be lacking in instruction or where we may need to bolster instruction. But I'm not sure offhand. I can get that information for you, though.
Other questions? Dan?
Thanks for the report. Very good information. My question is, when I'm looking at the percentages and places where we might be coming up short, my natural tendency is to say, well, there's a couple students in each of these different classrooms. But is your data such where you could potentially, let's say, a single classroom maybe bringing down, the results in one of these different areas? Or can you talk about that side of it in terms of being able to maybe tell specifically where some of the issues are?
Certainly, yeah. We can drill our data down right down to the student level. So determining, we could find what class that student is in, obviously. What we try to look for primarily are trends with data, meaning if you have a student, when you have a goal over several years, as the elementary system has had, it becomes much easier to make some of those determinations because you have data over time. When you have one snapshot of data, it's hard to go too deep in any assumptions. So you need to look in a more broad sense. But yeah, we can drill down right down to the individual student. And often what happens is you'll find those trends, you'll start to make determinations, but the system tends to adjust for those needs. Meaning if you have a certain subgroup that is underperforming, by the time we analyze the data, there's enough kind of anecdotal information that came to light that helps guide where we go.
Any other questions? No. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Barb.
You got to be faster with raising your hand.
First, Dave, thanks for what's that? Oh, okay. Thanks for helping me with the SMART goal acronym there. I was only able to get 3 out of 5. I was sitting there and going, I can't get that. So
that's impressive.
So thanks.
Impressive.
I know. So that'll be my goal for next SMART goal, to get 4 out of 5.
Go for 80%. Right?
Exactly. And just a general comment. I mean, I just really am overall very impressed with these results. I mean, when you stop and think about so many of these goals here are at or approaching 90%, and I mean, really, gosh, I mean that's I know that Mr. Koch had said we're shooting for 100, and that's great. I'm all on board for that. But I mean, I think once you cross that 90% threshold, obviously the gains will be hard to come by, and we'll have to work hard at it. But I mean, to be at that level, I think is just a testament to all our teaching staff. And just lastly, I guess one thing that I think the board should keep in mind that was really hit home with me too is the tremendous value of the collaborative time providing for our teachers to do this. I mean, I've heard it over and over again. And if I didn't realize it before, I think it just hit home even more now that this is something that's of tremendous value, and I think this board has to make sure that we can provide that in your school day. So, and once again, thanks for a great report.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? No. So thank you, Dave, for organizing the presentation. It's one of the, for me personally, it's one of the greatest board meetings all year because we get a chance to hear about all the really cool things that are going on. So I thank you. I thank all the principals that presented. But I wanted to especially thank the teachers that were courageous enough to come and share a little bit because I heard some really cool things, and I just like to repeat back some of what I heard. It's an exciting time to be at Hudson High School, which I think is a helpful thing to hear as board members. At the middle high, the privilege we have as sixth grade teachers to meet together, piggybacking on Mark's observation about the collaboration. And even Amanda, in her comments, the SMART goal process is an example of differentiated professional development, which is a different way to think about it. It had not occurred to me, but I think that's a really cool observation. So anyway, to all of you, thank you very much. And now I will give Mary the floor.
Well, certainly we're very proud of these results, but one of the things that really stood out to me this time, not differently from last time, but it really stood out this time, was we're really stretching ourselves with the goals, even if we don't make those goals. And the most important thing that I saw demonstrated tonight was that we're learning when we don't make the goal. And we're using that information to improve not only student learning, but teacher learning as well. And I think that's a really important thing as we look at continual improvement as a system, collaborating together, that we continue to stretch ourselves on goals that we may not always make based on our very best efforts to collaborate and to stretch. But when we don't, what are we learning from those goals and how can we use them to be better the next time for each and every student? And that's what I think was really demonstrated tonight very effectively by both administrators and teachers.
Okay, one last thing that I wanted to share. I should have said this before, but I did a little back of the napkin math here while we were going through the results for the elementary schools. And if my math is right, it means that over the course of the last 12 years, you've increased your percentage of students reading at grade level by 12%, okay? And if I also can guess the number of students that have gone through the elementary school, that's about 300 individuals that you have improved their ability to read and be successful in the classroom. So that is a huge shout out to the work that's going on in the K-12 buildings, but thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, Nancy, enrollment and staffing update.
Okay, this is an unofficial and brief enrollment update that I provided last night to the Personnel Committee. The total elementary enrollment is slightly up from the official September 2010 enrollment count. And based on projected enrollment last spring, we reduced 5 classrooms. And since that time, we have added 3 of those classrooms back. So 3 of the 5 have been restored as our enrollment has continued to grow. In order to maintain our class size guidelines and preserve our staffing dollars, we do now have 4 grade levels at 3 buildings that are capped, and students brand new to the district, are placed and registered at an elementary that has space available. Our total middle school enrollment is up by over 60 students from the official September 2010 enrollment count. And with this enrollment, the middle school remains significantly over capacity. And since the last board meeting, additional part-time staffing has been provided to the middle school in the areas of band and German. The total high school enrollment is slightly up from the official September 2010 count, and we have provided no additional staffing at that level. All grade levels, K-12, are now over 400, all throughout the district, K-12. And all the schools this week are conducting registrations, and my office will be updating the enrollments again next week. The enrollments change on a daily basis, as you know. I always have to say that. And this is not an official count at this point, but it's more of a trend. So we're slightly up at the elementary overall. We're more significantly up at the middle level, and we're a little bit up at the high school. But until really the door opens, you know, on September 1st, we know this from history, we're not really sure about our enrollments, and then the third Friday is the official count. Any questions at all?
Questions for Nancy? No? All right. Thanks, Nancy. Diane, no citizens request to speak? All right. So we'll move into topics for action. The first item in that section of the agenda is the health insurance plan provider information. Tim.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to have Bob Hogseth come up here to the table. Bob, if you want to come up. And Bob is with Summit Group Solutions. Bob has helped our health insurance work group, our committee, that has worked through and spent a number of hours, going through health insurance data and the different proposals that we receive for health and dental. The first thing I do want to do, though, is I just take a moment to recognize the individuals that served and volunteered their time on this group. Tess Rosardi, Deb Davenport, Brian Buck, Judy Wickstrom, Luke Chafee, Mark Cumlin, Deb Weissert, Nancy Sweet, Lori Williquit, Lori Head, Candy Miller, Sue Kuba, Brent Whitaker, and of course thanks to Bob as well. This group has spent, like I say, a fair amount of time receiving insurance information and poring over all the details. Sometimes not the most exciting task in the world. And they've done a very good job. My thanks to all those folks as well. Bob is going to talk a little bit about the information that he's looked at. Bob got into some of the real meat of the plans. We spent time, and you can see in front of you on your screen and up on the overhead above, you can see the first section, a summary of health insurance proposals. And I guess one of the things I'll let Bob talk a little bit about the different proposals on the health and the dental, and then I'll talk about the health insurance work group's recommendations. So Bob, if you want to summarize that.
Hello. Okay. Well, I want to correct Tim right away. I thought it was really exciting to go through all this. We sent out a request for proposals in mid-June. We gave folks about 4 weeks to submit. We got 18 proposals from 11 different agencies. And as you went through the 18, it did get less exciting. You're correct. But it was a long process, but a good process. I think you'll hopefully like the results there. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. I guess I'm here to answer questions. I'll just give you a brief overview. But if you look at the numbers up on the screen, it's not normally this easy. But if you look at those numbers, Health Partners really stood out. They're very aggressive in their bid. One thing you have to be leery of is what's the catch? Are they matching benefits? What are they going to do next year? Those types of things. So we did ask everyone for deviations in comparison to the WA contract. We went through those deviations. They were very minor. Went through those with the insurance committee, questioned Health Partners about them, and worked through that process. So we were very comfortable with the Health Partners proposal. As far as what would happen next year, a nice feature of the proposal was there was a cap a future rate increase on the second year. So that alleviated our fears about a big increase in 12 months. So again, that's a long story short, but we feel very, very comfortable, and the committee voted to recommend Health Partners switching from the WA Trust. Tim has all the exact numbers, but I know it's well in excess of $1 million savings annually. So again, it was not a real close call there. Pretty significant savings. Any questions before I move on to the dental?
Let me just to get a clarification. When we're talking about this program, this health insurance program, it includes all of the staff segments that we currently employ. Support.
Right. The teachers, the custodians, support staff, and retirees. Right. There were some minor differences. The major difference on your plan was there was a waiver of premium clause on a couple of the groups, and you had a 3-tier drug copay plan on a couple of groups and a 4-tier, I think, on another. But they're very, very minor differences, and the committee agreed that we would recommend one plan. So we kind of met in the middle on those copays, and everyone was very comfortable. It was a unanimous decision. Very little discussion not to move that way. So we are recommending one plan. Tim, I don't know if you're going to get into any more detail, but basically it was, if I remember right, the teacher's plan covers 75% of your people. So we use that plan as the base plan.
Yeah, we're actually there was like Bob mentioned, there was a variation. We actually had 3 plans, and one of the major pieces was the drug copay. So really consolidating that from 3 plans into one plan, and then going forward, being able to look at further plan design changes in the future that will allow us to have then 2 plans, and 2 plans that have more difference to them. So, okay.
Bob, can you speak to the network for Health Partners?
Yes, that's another thing that we analyzed. We wanted to make sure that all the major providers were in network. So we did what's called a disruption analysis. We got a printout of where all your dollars are spent. Did we do the top 100 or 200? I forget. But there were maybe 5 out of 100 that were a little different, and they were very insignificant. I think a couple of chiropractors, if I remember right. But the major health systems, the Alliance system, Health Partners, the Mayo system, all the hospitals you use were all in network.
Just to follow up to that, if somebody, for that small percentage that goes outside the network, what is there a copay at that point, or how does it work?
You have a different co-insurance level.
Okay.
I believe it's 20%.
Yeah, it's 20%
right.
copay. There is a maximum out of pocket on that. So
they still,
if somebody chose and they wanted to continue with their current provider and they didn't happen to be in the network, they could do that. Okay. There also is Health Partners also has a transition program for folks that have a provider that isn't in the network, especially if they're going through a treatment in the middle of a treatment or something. Health Partners does work with the individual to transition them eventually over to a network provider.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there's no guarantees, but we did request that they approach. These networks change every month. There's adds and deletes no matter what insurance company you're with. But we did ask Health Partners to approach those that are not in the network. Sometimes when a major employer is all of a sudden with Health Partners, some of the providers are more willing to become part of the network.
Madam President, and this is a fully insured plan?
This is a fully insured plan. I'll be honest with you, employers your size, I'm a big proponent of looking at a partial self-funding concept. We did that. In fact, most of the quotes came in on a partial self-funded concept. But the claims data was lacking from WA, and you're going to get very conservative bids if they don't have paid claims data. So none of them were able to beat the fully insured Health Partners. So our feeling was to go with that. And hopefully you won't get a surprise in 21 months. Maybe the increase will be minimal. But at least at that point, we'll have paid claims data. We looked at Health Partners' reports, so we'll be able to market this again and get good, sharp bids, I think, with the data that we'll have available.
Madam President, will we have access to this data? I mean, I know we struggled with getting the paid claims data, which is one of the reasons we couldn't look at other plans. What access will we have? And I mean, will we have unrestricted access to the data if we want to go?
Yes, there's very, very extensive, detailed reports, monthly, quarterly. All right, we looked at those reports.
I want to clarify too. There are HIPAA compliance or federal compliance for health information, and so those reports we don't get the information on who. We do get the data on the claims, the prognosis, that type of thing, though. So.
Right. There's no names associated. Yep. So any further questions on the medical?
Okay. So as Bob mentioned, the health insurance work group was recommending Health Partners for the health insurance, and then unless there are further questions, we'll move down to dental.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. In a dental, the recommendation by the group was to choose Delta Dental, and you'll notice they're third on the list. And the difference between Health Partners and Delta Dental in terms of cost is pretty minimal. I think it's about, in this situation here, we've got more family plans than we do single. It's about a $1,500 difference or less. And what we looked at, and if you look at MetLife, and Bob can talk about some of this, there are several differences. MetLife really wasn't a comparable plan. They had somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 differences, substantial differences in their plan design. Health Partners was closer, but again, part of the issue was Delta Dental had a very, very strong dental network, and including many, if not all, most of our dentists, local dentists here in town. And that's what really, I think, to us made them stand out. Bob, you want to comment further?
Yeah, the plan designs appear to be identical until you start looking at exclusions and limitations. So they weren't major, but there were enough. For example, I'll just give you one example. WA Trust on orthodontia. They would cover to age 27 for dependent children, and they would cover adult orthodontia. MetLife would go to age 18 and no adult coverage. There would be other examples where we'll do a certain procedure once every 10 years or once every 36 months. WA had no limits like that. So we carefully went through and to make sure that we were getting comparable limitations and exclusions. The only one that really said they could match WA Trust was Delta Dental, and they've taken it. They have about 30%, I believe, of the school districts in the state. So they actually developed and filed and had approved a fully insured contract that matched WA. They also had, like Tim said, the strongest network. We looked at your top 20 dentists by dollars spent, and WEA in-network had 9 of the 20 dentists. And when I say in-network, it means that they would accept all the charges. The employees would not get balanced bill if there's an excessive charge. And you'll get discounts if you went to those 9 out of 20. Delta Dental had 16 out of 20 in-network. Health Partners was 10 of 20. And MetLife, I think, was 8. It was less. Yeah. So Delta Dental had the best penetration of dentists. They matched the benefits the closest. And their cost is certainly right in there. So it was a pretty unanimous decision by the committee to go with Delta Dental, to recommend that.
Okay, any questions on Delta Dental or on the dental insurance?
Go ahead, Dan.
I just have another question regarding out-of-network. Did you cover that in terms of is it handled similarly to the medical side?
If you go out-of-network?
Yeah.
Yes, if you go out-of-network, you could possibly be balance billed. Let's say there's a procedure that's $100. And all of these companies, they say if you go in network, we only allow $80. All those that are in network would accept that $80 charge. If you go out of network, you only get reimbursed on the 80. You have to pay the balance or $20 out of your pocket. So you currently have that on 11 of your top 20 dentists. Your employees could get balance billed. So a lot of that will go away with Delta Dental. And again, I think this will give Delta Dental a little more clout to possibly approach those four and get them in network. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on with the committee's recommendations. The final piece for the recommendation is that the broker services, and the committee's recommending Gallagher Benefit Services, who was actually they were the low proposal at $40,000 per year, $46,000, I'm sorry, per year. And I don't know if you have any specific questions on the brokerage.
I didn't get the name of the broker, Tim.
Gallagher Benefit Services.
Gallery?
Gallagher.
Gallagher.
Right.
Yes.
The committee looked at the best combination of services and cost. You don't obviously just go for the lowest cost. What are you going to get what you pay for sometimes. So we looked at possibility of interviewing 4 of the agents. I mentioned that 9 agencies submitted bids. All of them I thought were very capable, good agencies. We narrowed it down to 2. We interviewed Riverbank in Hudson, and Gallagher Benefits is headquartered in Bloomington, Minnesota. After the presentations, again, I think both firms could do an excellent job, but we thought Gallagher Benefits had a little deeper capability as far as the services going forward. One of the big concerns of many employers is coping with national health reform. There are certain things that kick in every year. They had a very strong compliance department, a very strong wellness initiative department. Some of the technology, the programs, the online services for your employees were just a little more extensive than Riverbank. The Riverbank did an excellent job also. It's certainly very capable, but we thought the best bet was Gallagher.
Tim, when would the transition to the new healthcare provider and the dental care provider take place?
Well, this will be effective October 1st. We'll make the transition. So with your approval tonight of the health and dental carriers, we'll notify WEA Trust that we will be discontinuing coverage at the end of September and transition on October 1st to the new plans.
Yeah, you are required to give a 31-day notice, so that's the soonest you could put it in.
Are there other questions, Mark?
Just make a comment. Bob had mentioned that Gallagher Benefit Services had probably a deeper expertise and a larger network, and I just also wanted to add too that there was a significant cost savings over Riverbank. Obviously, we try to use local businesses, providers whenever possible, but when there's a substantial savings to the district, obviously we're compelled to look outside, and so that was also an additional factor.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Tim or for Bob? Hearing none, I think you're looking for a motion on, on the part of the board.
I'll just add one piece here. Of course, the question is how much are we saving? And looking at the health insurance, the district is going to realize a substantial savings, somewhere around 1.1 to 1.2 million, additionally over what we've already included in our budget allocation. So it is a very substantial savings moving to this. And just a couple of other pieces. The health insurance work group they're interested in meeting, continuing to meet, and really to become more knowledgeable about health care and how to use a plan and how to be responsible users of health care. And I think it's really very encouraging that we've got this group out there that wants to do that. So we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to look at other plan design options. So with that, I think we covered almost everything, unless you've got additional questions.
Okay. Hearing none, is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the committee to move to Health Partners for health insurance coverage and Delta Dental for dental coverage.
And
the broker.
Gallagher.
And I'm sorry, Gallagher for the benefits. Thank you.
I so move.
Motion by Tom.
I second it.
Second by Mark.
Oh my God.
Sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for your work.
You're welcome. I just want to say it was a real pleasure to work with Nancy and Tim and Mark and Lori in the office. And the insurance committee was really, I've worked with other committees, but just very receptive, very open-minded. They did a great job. So.
Great.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Yep.
The next topic for action is the health insurance employee contribution. Tim?
Okay. As we reviewed and looked at as the proposals came in and we reviewed the information, the next question was regarding employee contribution to the health insurance plan. And this would be both endorsed by Personnel and Finance that for this year, for 11-12, employees would pay approximately 8.7% of the cost of the health insurance, and then transitioning into 12-13, they pay 12.6%. So it's a way for us to really transition some of the changes that have occurred over the past few months. Employees are picking up their pension costs. We're going through a health insurance plan change. We've had, of course, some districts around us have extended contracts. We're not going that route. So we think it's a good transition, and we're going to reap some additional savings in the future.
Are there questions for Tim on the recommendation for the employee contribution? Hearing none, is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve that recommendation for an employee contribution moving to 8.7% for the school year 11-12 and 12.6% for the subsequent year?
I so move.
Motion by Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Tim. Employee handbook. Nancy.
Okay, closely related to Tim's report here. If we move first to the insurance benefits for teachers and also for support employees. The insurance benefits handbook provisions were developed with input from the teacher handbook committee, as well as meetings with support employees. And these documents, these provisions were reviewed by the personnel committee last evening. They include, for both teachers and support employees, group health insurance, benefit in lieu of insurance for full-time employees, dental insurance, long-term disability insurance, life insurance, flex benefit program, and each of the handbook provisions includes an insurance disclaimer. The key differences between the teacher insurance benefits and the support staff benefits are in one case, their eligibility to participate in an insurance plan. Teachers are eligible on a school year calendar, and support employees are eligible on a fiscal year calendar. Teachers are eligible at 20 hours per week or more of regular work and employment, and support employees are eligible at 30 or more hours per week. And that's relative to the health plan and the dental plan. There is a regulatory change in the life insurance eligibility that's applicable to all employees, not a discretionary decision on the part of the district, but it's a regulatory change. And you'll see that in the documents. No new benefits are provided in these handbook provisions. Almost all of the benefits that our employees had were maintained, and to the extent possible, we balanced the benefits between employee classifications. You just approved a particular percentage of contribution that the district will make, and Tim will need to work out the dollar amount. But I would ask that the board approve for the handbook, the employee handbook, the insurance benefits for teachers, and I should say that includes the other certified employees, school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, and school nurses, and similarly the insurance benefits for all of our support employees.
Are there questions for Nancy? I have one, Nancy.
Okay.
On the items in the handbook that are not directly related to health insurance or life insurance, et cetera, but more of the personal leave, vacation, et cetera, are there areas where there were significant modifications to what these employees have had access to in the past?
I'm actually going to cover that next.
Oh. Sorry.
Yes, good question. Yeah. No, I'll cover that next because that's another key substantive component for our employees. And that will be a handbook provision that you'll need to adopt next. Okay.
Do you want us to do separate the insurance?
Actually, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. So it looks like we are, you're looking for a motion for us to approve the insurance benefits section of the handbook,
yes,
separate from
yes,
the one you'll cover next.
Yep.
All right. So with that, is there someone who would be willing to make that motion?
Madam President, I would make the motion that the board approve the insurance benefit for all various employee groups as presented in the handbook.
All right. Motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Back to you, Nancy.
Okay. Then moving to, actually there are 3 documents titled Leaves of Absence. One is for teachers and other certified employees like school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, and school nurses. And the other 2 documents, one is for full-time support employees and the other is for part-time support employees. Again, the content of these provisions, we did gain input from the teacher handbook advisory committee, and also we held meetings for support employees to give us input, to tell us their priorities, etc. And we did review this material last evening with the personnel committee. Both of the documents, components of the handbook include such things as sick leave, bereavement leave, provision for court appearances, emergency leaves, extended leaves, medical leaves, etc. And for full-time employees, provisions for vacation and holidays and other components. The difference, again, for teachers is that their leaves are based on the school calendar year, and for the support employees, full-time on the fiscal year, and part-time based on the fiscal year as well. Again, there's no new leave provisions, and we tried very hard to maintain the leaves of absence that our employees have been provided in the past. And I forgot your question, Barb. So,
were there any significant differences to what they've historically had access to?
There are not.
Say no.
There are not significant differences.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Nancy on this handbook item? No. Hearing none, if there is someone who would be willing to make a motion to approve the recommended handbook items for all the employee groups on leaves of absence. Motion by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And might I just say, I've been asked a couple of times by board members, when will the handbook be done? And And, the way that we're doing it, I think, is the right way. We are working with committees. We are getting input on the important priorities of their employment conditions. And so it does take a little bit more time. And so there are a few more provisions that we will need to have you act on separately, but eventually it's all going to come together.
So Nancy, you're saying we should be patient and enjoy the journey?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we have a new policy and a revised policy that, Corey, you're going to walk us through.
Yeah, thank you. Policy 5112 is a new policy, and it's a result of Wisconsin Act 41. And what that requires is, starting this coming school year, school districts are prohibited from enrolling students in first grade unless they've completed kindergarten. And that's a new law that all districts are really catching up to. And there's some nuances to this that we've sorted out. Really the intent here is to require parents to, when they enroll in kindergarten, to complete it, to be there and be participating the entire time. They did not change the compulsory attendance law. So you still do not have to enroll in kindergarten, but if you do, they're basically saying you have to complete kindergarten for first grade. So it's an interesting balancing act here that districts are engaging in. So if you look at and then we have to establish procedures and conditions and standards for exemptions and things like that. So I'd like to walk you through some of the highlights of the policy, and then you can ask questions as you see fit. In your materials there, you'll see that we've defined and clarified students need to be age of 5 before September 1st for kindergarten and age of 6 before September 1 first grade. And we clearly state that without successfully completing 5-year-old kindergarten, you may not be enrolled in first grade. There's some things as you go down into this policy here that we would allow for students if they turn 6, for example, before November 1st. And that mirrors our work or our requirements for early entrance to kindergarten. So that date is similar. So for example, a student might come from another district or out-of-state area and has completed kindergarten but isn't 6 yet before September 1st, and that allows us then to enroll them in first grade without making them repeat first grade again. So we go through here, and there's some requirements. Again, that they have to complete a 5-year-old kindergarten, or that maybe they were admitted somewhere else to a first grade program in another district, or, as you'll see later here in a minute, they've gone through an evaluation and we've determined they are ready for first grade. And the bottom of page 1 here just lays out some of the exceptions that the Wisconsin Act 41 requires. So in a nutshell, if they come from another district or another place where this was not a prerequisite, we have the flexibility to consider them to enroll into first grade. If they were exempted in another location, another state, another district, we can honor that exemption and allow them to attend first grade. And then if they've successfully completed a program elsewhere that we deem as a district equivalent to our 5-year-old kindergarten, we can allow them to go ahead and enroll in first grade. If you go to the page 2, or the next page here, then the last piece of that is we still, even if all those exceptions fail, we have the ability to do an evaluation, sort of like an early entrance evaluation, and determine if they appear to be ready and we think they'll be successful in entering into first grade. So parents would have to submit a request for entrance on or before September 1st and for the year they're requesting. And then the main chunk of that page is just laying out the criteria and procedures we would go through to complete that evaluation. And it's much more clearly laid out than in the past. And this is also then resulting in our revision to the early entrance to kindergarten procedures as well. But as you see here, we look at a number of areas and determine if they appear to, through that evaluation, be ready for first grade. And then we also lay out the procedures as far as how that would occur. If there was a denial and we determined that they were not ready, parents can appeal to the building principal. And if they were denied again, then they can appeal to the Director of Student Services, and that decision would be final as the appeal process is laid out. So that was awfully fast. What kind of questions do you have on this particular policy?
I was just going to add that Corey reviewed this with the Learning and Program Development Committee twice in June and July, and the committee endorses the modifications that he's walked us through tonight. So.
Hearing none, I'll move on to the procedure of 5110.1, and this is a revision to our early entrance to kindergarten procedure, and this just really mirrors the policy we just looked at. Some of the changes here, there was some cleaning up of this. We changed, for example, Director of Pupil Services to Student Services Director, some things like that. We did clarify and better define that a child who is being considered for early entrance must demonstrate social, emotional, physical maturity as well as intellectual ability for success in school beyond kindergarten. So we're trying to clarify what we're looking for and expecting to meet those requirements. We did make a change here as well that parents need to submit a request to us, to my office, or to the Student Services Director's office before May 1st. One of the primary reasons is our staff don't work in the summer, and it's awfully difficult to get those done really in the summer and having people available. Now, we will do our best in making exceptions for families who move in over the summer and make those requests, and we'll do everything we can to get those completed as fast and thoroughly as possible. The criteria on the bottom of the page mirrors what we just saw in the policy work. We just are more explicit about the criteria, what we require as far as the conditions for students to be accepted in an early entrance. And then there's a procedure section as well. It mirrors the policy that you just reviewed. And as well, the appeals procedure matched the policy that we just looked at. So if the evaluation team determines they did not meet the criteria, there can be an appeal to principal. And if the principal denies that, it can be appealed to, again, the Student Services Director, and that decision would be final. So in a nutshell, this just adds more clarity and specificity to the procedure, and it is more tightly aligned now to what we have to do for entrance into first grade.
Okay.
Questions?
All right, so is there a motion to approve the new policy and as well as the revised procedure as Corey has presented it?
So moved.
Motion by Tom.
Second.
Second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Just 2011-12 district goals, Mary.
Madam President and board members, the recommendation for the goals I've organized in two different areas: high school learning for the future and 612 space for learning as one of the key areas, and then HSD 2025 implementation. We could really collapse all of these into some level of HSD 2025 implementation, but just for clarity and to move forward, I have identified two areas. The first goal under High School Learning for the Future, certainly you've taken action to advance the High School Learning for the Future implementation plan for this year. You've heard a little bit about that tonight from Teresa and the excitement at the high school, so we're looking forward to that. And then further development, Laura and her team have talked about in relationship to that multi-year plan. So continuing that work and moving it forward. Certainly very important work for our students and staff as we move to the future and help prepare students for their future. The second one under this category is making progress toward a long-term solution for grades 6 through 12 space for learning. You heard tonight again from Nancy Sweet that the middle school is well over capacity, and the high school will be in the future as those students continue to move through from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. And so as we look at that, we have reported in the past, Director Tim Erickson is spending quite a bit of time these days working on identifying a site for purchase that's over 60 usable acres that will help address our future growth needs, and we hope to bring some news of that in the near future. So advancing that work both on a site and also then looking forward to work with our community on developing a solution that's a long-term solution. And then moving on to the second category, HSD 2025 implementation. In our previous conversations, we had not talked about this first goal, but as we looked at the work in the district, we have recently added it, knowing that this is work that we're going to do, and we've reported that to you. We felt it was important for us to affirm that as part of the district goal. And I'd like to have Sandy and Corey address this goal. This is a pre-K through 12 collaborative effort, and it's an effort that is a collaborative effort between our schools, learning services, and student services. So Corey and Sandy, talk about that goal for us, please.
I'll talk first about the definition of response to intervention. And in Wisconsin, it is defined as a process for achieving higher levels of academic and behavioral success for all students. And rigorous implementation of RTI includes a combination of high-quality instructional practice, balanced assessment, and we've heard it again tonight, and collaboration, all of which are infused with culturally responsive practices. And it is based on a problem-solving model, and that RTI approach considers environmental factors as they might apply to an individual student's difficulty, and provides services and or intervention as soon as the student demonstrates a need. And it's focused primarily on addressing academic problems, and RTI has now emerged as the new way to think about both disability identification and early intervention assistance for the most vulnerable, academically unresponsive children in schools and school districts.
I think I would just add to that what we want you to walk away with, it's the academic work as well as the behavioral side. So positive behavior interventions and supports is really that idea of preventing inappropriate behavior and teaching and reinforcing appropriate behavior systematically across all the locations in the building and across classrooms and involving all staff. And we've begun those efforts in both areas already, and this is really about a 3-year implementation. We have all 8 schools involved in both RTI and PBIS in some form. We are required to have the RTI on the academic side in place by 2012-13 for the use for identifying certain students with disabilities in the state. And we are aggressively engaging in the PBIS work here this year, getting our universal system in place. And it's like was mentioned earlier tonight, there's a universal system, then there's a group kind of more focused intervention level, and then the last tier 3 level is individual intervention. So what we really want you to walk away with again is there's an academic side, and then as well as how do we work with positive student behaviors as well. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Sandy.
Nope, as Corey mentioned, we've started the work because a lot of it is, again, coming up with assessments that adequately identify students that are in need, and then developing those interventions. You know, what are we going to do with those students, monitoring that progress, and having a whole system both in reading and mathematics and in writing. There are several areas that we must create this system, K through 12.
This certainly aligns with the work that we have been at for quite a number of years now. So it formalizes that work in a certain structure based on the requirements, but it is work that we as a district have initiated prior to the requirements of RTI and PBIS. So moving that forward, you heard some of, in the SMART goal work this evening, certainly RTI and PBIS affect that work and support student learning. And then lastly, research the development of an online high school option for students as an alternative to complete graduation requirements. We know we've been talking about personalization for students, different learning styles, and certainly virtual learning is part of that process. We've also realized over the year that an increasing number of students are open enrolling to virtual schools. And it's important for us to look at a district, is this a viable option for the Hudson School District and for our students? And so Sandy will be leading that effort along with Laura Love to research this, I'm sure, with a team of teachers as well, to look at different options for us and explore and evaluate where we should be in this environment and bring that report back to the Board of Education. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, and we recommend these goals to you for the 2011-12 school year.
Are there questions for Mary? I had one, and that was on the online high school for you, Mary, or perhaps for Sandy. Oftentimes when we're doing benchmarking of Hudson's performance, we look at a suite of high-performing districts in the state of Wisconsin. I'm just curious, as you've done that work, if you know what percentage or even just sort of a frame of reference of, is that a common offering in those high-performing school districts?
I'm aware, I don't know a percentage, Barb.
Okay.
I am aware of some that do have charter schools within their systems that are online programs that are high-performing districts, and others that are kind of going our current path of offering some online options to students. And then now we're actually just sharing some current information that's talking about creating kind of, again, a continuum of offerings from blended online opportunities to all the way fully online. So there's going to be quite a great deal of research to be done.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sandy. Go ahead, Pat.
Sandy or Mary, are we already doing some online, or is it some, I don't know, is it online? Did we do some this year?
This past year, we had over 40 students take a variety of AP courses that we do not offer within our four walls at the high school. Okay. Things like AP statistics and some others that we don't currently offer. A few languages that we don't offer on site, such as French, and then a few in the web design kind of offerings as well.
Do you take an evaluation or ask the students how it went? What is, if there was difficulties? Do you have that background?
Laura and I actually met with a student just about a week ago, and we're working on a survey to go out to the parents/students right now. Mm-hmm.
Dan.
I have a question under the first bullet under HSD 2025. At one of our recent board meetings, we had the Strive folks here and talking about the success and development of that program. Does that fit within the RTI? And
yeah, it would. It'd really be considered one of our Tier 2 or even a Tier 3 intervention because it's targeting individual need.
Okay.
So it's one of the options in our continuum that we're continuing to work on developing.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? All right, hearing none. If there is somebody who would be willing, Mary, did you have a, okay. If there's someone who would be willing to make a motion to approve the recommended 2011-12 district goals.
Madam President, I move to approve the 2011-12 district goals.
Motion by Lynn. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Pat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are at consent items on the agenda, and so if someone could make the motion to approve the consent items along with the dollar amount of the expenditures.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent items, as well as move that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,594,518.44.
Motion by Lynn. Is there a second? Second by Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Finance Committee, Lynn.
Madam President, the Finance Committee met on July 25th. We supported revisiting the topic of additional revenue sources, including advertising on athletic fields or other less traditional sources, as a way to make up for declining revenues for the total budget, and we'll report back as this develops. Second on the agenda for finance was the review of the medical and dental insurance, which we reviewed earlier at length and in this meeting under the topics for action. Next on the agenda, Tim gave the committee a 2011-12 budget update, which included the 2% increase on the levy. CPI for this region for 2011 is expected to be, or is 2.2%. We also had discussions of the district's plan for the assignment of the fund balance to repay the qualified school construction bonds, knowing that budget revenue numbers are not expected to increase, and we will need to plan for that repayment. The committee is researching options for repayment and will report back to the board. And we also adjourned to closed session to deliberate regarding the purchase of public property.
Questions for Lynn? All right. The second committee report is learning and program development. We too met on the 25th of July. We had 2 agenda items that evening, both of which you've heard information about. We heard from Sandy and the team on the secondary math improvements. And then we also heard from Corey on the new policy and the revised procedure, again, which the committee recommended moving to the full board. That was our committee meeting. Are there questions? Hearing none, moving to the Personnel Committee. Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee met last night in an absolutely marathon session. I thank my colleagues and administrators for their endurance. It was a very long one, but we had big issues with the insurance, et cetera, that required a lot of time. So we opened with a closed session, actually, to be respectful of Bob's time. He was going to follow that, in which we consider employment, promotion, compensation of specific employees, consider resignation agreement with a specific employee, and to negotiate the health insurance provider contract. Then most of the other items we have discussed earlier today. We talked and improved the health insurance plan provider and the employee contribution that we approved earlier. The employee handbook work and administrative recommendations, leave of absence, insurance piece, etc., that we also approved. Then we had discussion with regarding the number of school days. Now, I'm sorry. Okay. We have 178. Most of the schools in our CISA have 180, as well as several other high-performing districts, and it was our recommendation that not this year, no change for this year, but for the 2012-2013 year, we go to 180 school days. This would help facilitate accommodating inclement weather days. Right now, when we have missed day of school, we're forced to make it up at the end of the year. It's not terribly productive, so this way we'll have that a little bit of a cushion built in for the school year. Where was I? Oh, and Mary just updated us on a task force or design team, I guess it's termed by the state superintendent, Tony Evers. It's called an educator effectiveness design team that's going to be working on developing recommendations for an evaluation system for teachers and school administrators. And lastly, we had Ms. Sweet's enrollment and staffing update, which we discussed at length earlier. So.
Just adding a couple things to that. Nancy, you were going to go add?
Well, I was just going to say that the agenda that's included in the board book material is not the final agenda that was posted to the public. That was an earlier agenda, and so just to make sure that that's noted.
Ditto.
Ditto, okay. Ditto.
One other thing, just on the number of school days, knowing that we're talking about additional days for our teaching staff, and that most districts, or many districts, do not have teachers make up that first inclement weather day. We also talked about that accommodation as part of adding those 2 additional days.
I do have a question that is related to the educator effectiveness item on your agenda, but not specifically perhaps related to the conversation you had. But within the last 2 days, Governor Dayton in Minnesota has announced that they will seek, I don't know what the right phrase is, but a waiver on No Child Left Behind, and they're looking at some state standards that they might adopt in lieu of No Child Left Behind. So I'm curious if this Tony Evers task force has anything to do with that, and whether or not Wisconsin is contemplating a similar decision.
The state superintendent actually has announced that he is very pleased about Arnie Duncan's announcement of waivers of state to the No Child Left Behind regulations. And so I assume he will be moving forward with a waiver for Wisconsin. I don't have any of the details of what's being considered in relationship to that, but it is the waivers that deal with meeting the 100% of students being proficient and advanced, which we all know is not a goal that can be attained. And so we'll look forward to more information and can bring that back.
All right, thank you. We are at the final item on the agenda, which is adjourning to a closed session. We will not be returning to open session this evening. If there is a board member who would care to make that motion, including the language on the agenda.
Madam President, I move to adjourn to a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, Parent F, to consider employment, promotion, and compensation of specific employees, and to consider a resignation agreement with a specific employee.
Motion by Tom. We have different language, I think, Tom.
Did I read the wrong one?
Yep. Thank you.
I move to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, Parent F, to consider employment, promotion, and compensation of specific employees, and Parent E, to deliberate regarding the purchase of public property.
All right. Motion by Tom. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Pat. We'll have a roll call vote.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaiser shot aye.
We are adjourned to closed session. Thank you.